Admiral Zorthak swirled the blue liquid in his glass, the 3 moons of Centauri Prime, casting a soft glow through the viewport of his personal quarters. Around him, diplomats and military officials from 12 species laughed and chatted. These gatherings had become a tradition whenever the Galactic Confederation Council concluded its quarterly sessions. "Tell us the human story again, Admiral," urged Delegate Prill, her feathery antennae twitching with anticipation. Zorthak smiled, revealing sharp teeth that gleamed in the ambient light. This was his favorite part of these gatherings. "Very well," he said, setting down his drink and standing to his full height of nearly 7 feet. The room quieted. Long ago, before the Confederation united our 1,000 worlds, explorers discovered a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. He gestured dramatically with his 4-fingered hand. The planet was called Earth, home to a species known as humans. These creatures were strange, soft-skinned with only 2 arms and 2 legs, but their brains. He tapped his scaled forehead. Their brains made them dangerous. The younger delegates leaned forward, even though most had heard variations of this tale before. Humans developed technology at an alarming rate. While other species took millennia to discover space travel, humans went from primitive flight to orbit in less than a century. They were violent, constantly at war with themselves, and most troubling of all, they thrived on challenge. Where sensible species avoid danger, humans ran toward it. Delegate Prill's mate, attending his first diplomatic function, raised a hesitant appendage. What happened to them? Zorthak's voice dropped lower. The early Confederation, before our time, decided humans were too unpredictable to join galactic society. Their planet was supposedly quarantined, surrounded by beacons warning all ships to stay away. Over time, as no human ship ever breached the quarantine, many began to doubt they ever existed at all. He shrugged his massive shoulders. Many scholars now believe humans were invented as a cautionary tale. After all, no species could be so adaptable yet so reckless and survive their own nature. The gathering erupted in amused chittering and electronic hums of laughter. In the monitoring station of Outpost Kappa 17, Junior Science Officer Klidnera stifled a yawn. The midnight shift was always dull, especially on this remote facility at the edge of Confederation space. Nothing interesting ever happened here. Her 6-fingered hands moved over the sensor controls, performing routine scans of nearby sectors. The station's primary purpose was monitoring for signs of the Voidborn, mysterious entities that occasionally emerged from the uncharted regions. But in 50 years, Outpost Kappa 17 had recorded only 3 false alarms. Klidnera's antenna suddenly twitched as her console emitted a soft chime. The sensors had detected something unusual, an energy signature unlike anything in the Confederation database. She adjusted the settings, thinking it must be an equipment malfunction. The signature persisted, coming from an unexplored sector beyond the Heracles Nebula. Klidnera hesitated, then pressed the communication button. "Commander Veldun, I'm picking up an unusual reading in Sector 47 Theta." The voice that responded sounded irritated at being disturbed. "What kind of reading, officer?" "I'm not sure, sir. It's like nothing I've seen before. The pattern suggests advanced propulsion technology, but it doesn't match any known Confederation or trading species." A long sigh came through the speaker. "The equipment out here is ancient, Klidnera. It's probably catching echoes from a pulsar or a sensor ghost. Log it and run diagnostics on your console." "But, sir..." "That's an order, officer. I don't want to be disturbed again unless the Voidborn themselves come knocking." The communication clicked off. Klidnera stared at her screen where the strange energy signature pulsed steadily. Following orders, she logged the anomaly and initiated diagnostic protocols. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Something that might change everything they thought they knew about what waited beyond the stars. The energy signature flickered once more, then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. 3 months passed since Junior Science Officer Klidnera detected the strange energy signature. Life at Outpost Kappa 17 continued as usual, and she had almost forgotten about the incident. Almost. On this day, Clydnera sat in the station's dining area, picking at her food cube while reviewing data on her tablet. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Commander Veldun's voice echoed through the speakers. Clydnera rushed to her monitoring post, heart racing. The main screen showed a massive vessel had appeared at the edge of Confederation space. It seemed to have materialized from nowhere, as if stepping through an invisible door. The ship was unlike anything in Confederation records. A kilometer-long behemoth of dark metal with sleek lines and ominous protrusions that scanner readings identified as weapon systems. Its hull absorbed sensor scans rather than reflecting them. "What is that thing?" asked a technician, voice trembling. Commander Veldun stood rigid, his normally gray skin turning pale. "Send alert to Confederation Central Command. Unknown vessel, potentially hostile, has entered protected space." Before anyone could act, every communication device in the station crackled to life. A voice, clear, strong, and speaking in perfect galactic standard, came through. "This is Captain John Mercer of the United Earth Alliance warship U.S. Defiant. We represent humanity. Your expansion has reached our quarantine zone. We request diplomatic contact." The room fell silent. Humanity. The myths were real. On the Confederation capital world of Nestros Prime, the High Council chamber erupted in chaos. "Impossible," shouted First Minister Grekva, slamming his fist on the table. "Humans are stories to frighten children." Admiral Zorthax studied the holographic display of the massive ship. "The evidence suggests otherwise, Minister. This vessel's technology is far beyond our current capabilities." The display expanded to show more data streaming in from monitoring stations throughout Confederation space. 27 more ships had been detected, all holding position just outside key Confederation systems. "They've been watching us," Zorthax said quietly. "Who knows for how long?" Security Director Lan pushed forward. "This must be a trick. Some unknown species using our myths against us. The ship calls itself U.S. Defiant. It matches descriptions from the ancient texts," countered Science Minister Trilly. "And look at their transmission signal. It carries embedded data about their biology, culture, and history, as if they're introducing themselves." First Minister Grekva shook his head in disbelief. "If these are truly humans, why reveal themselves now? Why not centuries ago?" "The message mentioned our expansion reaching their quarantine zone," Zorthax pointed out. "Colony Initiative 7B has been pushing into the restricted sectors near the Heracles Nebula." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. The quarantine hadn't been to keep humans contained. It had been to keep the Confederation away from human space. "We need to respond," Zorthax said finally. "If the myths hold any truth, humans are unpredictable and potentially dangerous. But they're asking for diplomacy, not threatening attack." First Minister Grekva nodded slowly. "Admiral Zorthax, you will lead our diplomatic team. Make contact with these humans. Learn their intentions. The rest of the fleet will be put on high alert." "And if they prove hostile?" asked Security Director Lan. Grekva looked grim. "Then the Confederation faces its greatest threat since the Voidborn Wars." On the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Captain John Mercer watched the tactical display as smaller Confederation vessels took up positions at a safe distance. "They're scared, sir," said Lieutenant Olivia Carter from her communication station. "All channels are buzzing with panic." Mercer nodded. "As expected. We've been boogeymen in their stories for 1,000 years. Incoming transmission, Captain. They're accepting our request for diplomatic talks." Mercer's weathered face showed the hint of a smile. "Good. Inform the ambassador. Phase 1 complete." Behind him, the view screen showed the vast expanse of Confederation space. Billions of stars, thousands of worlds, and a civilization about to face the reality behind their oldest myths. Space Station Harmony floated in neutral territory, specially prepared for the historic meeting. The station's central chamber had been redesigned with tables and chairs that could accommodate both Confederation species and the newly arrived humans. Admiral Zorthax adjusted his formal uniform and tried to calm his nerves. In a few minutes, he would meet creatures from stories that had entertained dinner guests for years. Now those stories had warships. The chamber doors slid open. 5 humans entered, walking with a confident stride that immediately commanded attention. At their lead was a woman with short gray hair and piercing blue eyes. Her face showed lines of age, but her posture remained straight and strong. "I am Ambassador Olivia Carter of the United Earth Alliance," she announced in perfect galactic standard. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Zorthax stepped forward. "Admiral Zorthax, representing the Galactic Confederation. We welcome you." The human delegation took their seats across from the Confederation representatives. Zorthax couldn't help but study them. They looked so ordinary, yet so strange. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin without scales or fur, just like the legends described. "Let's be direct," Ambassador Carter said. "For over 1,000 years, we've observed your confederation from behind our borders. We were content to remain isolated until your recent expansion threatened the buffer zone established between our civilizations." Security Director Lan leaned forward. "You claim to have been watching us. For what purpose?" A male human with a short beard spoke up. "Self-preservation. I'm Defense Secretary Frank Miller. History shows what happens when technologically mismatched civilizations meet. It rarely ends well for either side." Zorthax felt a chill. "How many worlds do you control, Ambassador?" 217 colonized star systems, hidden behind cloaking technology that makes them appear uninhabitable to your sensors. The Confederation delegates exchanged alarmed glances. Their entire alliance consisted of just over 1,000 worlds. "If you've been watching us," Zorthax asked, "why reveal yourselves now? Why not centuries ago?" Ambassador Carter's expression hardened. "We were banished because your ancestors feared us. History has proven them wise." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Minister Trilly broke it with a question. "What do you want from us now?" "Recognition of our territory. A formal peace treaty. Trade, eventually, if trust can be established." The talks continued for hours, covering history, territory, and technology. Throughout it all, Zorthax observed how the humans negotiated. Firm but not aggressive, confident but willing to compromise on minor points. As the meeting neared its end, a Confederation aide rushed into the room and whispered urgently to Security Director Lan. The director's face darkened. "Is something wrong?" Ambassador Carter asked, noticing the disturbance. Director Lan stood abruptly. "We've just received word that one of your scout ships was detected conducting scans of our military installation in the Proxima sector. This meeting was a distraction." The humans looked genuinely confused. Ambassador Carter shook her head. "We have no ships in that sector. All our vessels are accounted for." "Lies," Lan shouted. "The ship has been neutralized. Your spying will not. You attacked one of our ships." Secretary Miller stood, his calm demeanor vanishing. Without provocation, Zorthax tried to regain control of the situation. "There must be some mistake. Let's verify." His words were cut off as alarms blared throughout the station. A voice came over the communication system. "Unknown vessels detected. 30 warships have appeared in Confederation space." The human delegation received messages on their devices. Ambassador Carter's face turned to stone as she read the update. "That was a civilian research vessel," she said quietly, "with 23 crew members aboard." She looked up at the Confederation delegates, her eyes cold. "You have made a terrible mistake. Fleet Commander Grant is demanding those responsible for the attack. You have 24 hours to comply." The diplomatic meeting dissolved into chaos as both delegations rushed to contact their respective leaders. The brief hope for peaceful contact was already fading, replaced by the growing shadow of conflict. Watching the humans leave, Admiral Zorthax realized with growing dread that the old myths hadn't captured the half of it. Humans weren't just strange or dangerous. They were powerful beyond imagination. And now they were angry. Panic spread across Confederation space as news of the human ultimatum reached every world. 30 massive warships had appeared without warning, positioned near key military bases and population centers. On the Confederation capital, Admiral Zorthax stood before the High Council, his normally confident posture now stiff with worry. "The human ships have made no aggressive moves yet," he reported, "but their message is clear. They want those responsible for attacking their research vessel." First Minister Grekva pounded his fist on the table. "This is outrageous. They appear from nowhere after 1,000 years and make demands. We don't even know if it was truly their ship." Security Director Land shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The attack was authorized by General Dravkar of the Outer Defense Command. He claims the vessel was conducting military scans. Junior Science Officer Klipnera, recently transferred to the capital, stood nervously at the back of the chamber. She had been summoned to provide technical analysis of the human ships, but what she had discovered went far beyond technology. "Ministers," she said, her voice wavering, "I've analyzed the data from the destroyed ship. It matches the unusual energy signature I detected 3 months ago at Outpost Kappa 17. But there's something else." All eyes turned to her. The ship was indeed a research vessel. Its sensors were scientific, not military. And it was in open space, not within the military zone as reported. Security Director Land's face darkened. "That's impossible," General Dravkar's report clearly stated. The report was falsified. Klipnera interrupted, her voice stronger now. "I found the original sensor logs. The human ship never entered the restricted area." Silence fell over the room. In a small meeting room adjacent to the council chamber, diplomatic liaison Peter Martinez paced nervously. As one of the few Confederation officials with special training in xenodiplomacy, he had been hastily assigned to the crisis team. "This is madness," he muttered to his aide. "We're on the brink of war with a species that has technology far beyond ours. Did you see the scans of their ships? Our entire fleet couldn't take down one of them." "Sir," his aide whispered urgently, "someone's here to see you." Klipnera slipped into the room, clutching a data tablet to her chest. "Liaison Martinez, I have information you need to see." She handed him the tablet. "General Dravkar didn't just attack that ship by mistake. He planned it. Look at these communications I uncovered. He believes humans are an existential threat that must be eliminated before they fully emerge from isolation." Martinez scanned the documents, his face growing pale. "This is treason." He deliberately provoked them. He looked up at Klipnera. "Why bring this to me?" "Because you're trying to prevent war, and so am I." Aboard the human flagship Guardian, Fleet Commander Susan Grant reviewed tactical displays showing Confederation military movements. "They're scrambling," she observed. "No coherent defense strategy." Captain Eric Daniels nodded. "Their technology is at least a century behind ours. This wouldn't be a war, Commander. It would be a slaughter." Grant's stern face showed no emotion. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The diplomatic team still believes this was the action of a rogue element, not Confederation policy. And if it wasn't," asked Daniels, "then we show them why humans were quarantined in the first place." She turned to her communications officer. "Any response to our ultimatum?" "Yes, Commander. 2 messages. First, from their official channels requesting a 48-hour extension to investigate. Second," the officer hesitated, "a private channel communication from someone named Peter Martinez. He says he has proof this was an unauthorized action by a General Dravkar and requests immediate secure communication." Grant raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Seems there might be some sensible people in the Confederation after all." She turned to Captain Daniels. "Prepare a shuttle. I think it's time for a more direct approach. Outside the viewport, the massive human fleet hung in space like silent predators, weapons powered but holding fire, giving the Confederation one last chance to choose peace over conflict. The small meeting room in the lower levels of the Confederation Capitol building was not meant for gatherings of such importance. Peter Martinez nervously straightened the digital files on the table as Admiral Zorthax and Clid Nera waited beside him. "Are you certain the human representative will come?" Zorthax asked, checking the time again. Before Martinez could answer, the door slid open. A tall human woman in a dark uniform walked in, flanked by 2 guards. Her silver hair was pulled back tightly, and her eyes quickly scanned the room with military precision. "Fleet Commander Susan Grant." She introduced herself. "I understand you have information about the attack on our research vessel." Martinez nodded and gestured to Clid Nera. Junior Science Officer Clid Nera discovered evidence that General Dravkar orchestrated the attack deliberately. He believes humans are a threat that must be eliminated before you can fully emerge from isolation. Clid Nera stepped forward and activated her tablet. Holographic images appeared above the table, secret communications, falsified reports, and surveillance footage. "General Dravkar leads our Outer Defense Command," she explained. "He has been preparing for this moment for years. The attack wasn't a mistake. It was the first step in his plan to provoke a war." Commander Grant's expression remained neutral as she studied the evidence. Why would he want war when your technology is clearly outmatched? Admiral Zorthax answered grimly, "Because he has acquired forbidden weapons technology from the ancient archives, weapons that might actually harm your ships." Meanwhile, in the High Council chamber, General Dravkar addressed the assembled ministers with fiery conviction. "The humans are stalling for time while they position their fleet for a full assault," he declared. "Our ancestors were right to fear them. They are conquerors by nature. We must strike first." First Minister Grekva looked uncertain, but Admiral Zorthax believes we can still reach a diplomatic solution. "Zorthax is a fool who tells human fairy tales at parties," Dravkar sneered. "I have spent my career studying the ancient records. I know what humans are capable of." He activated a display showing the position of Confederation defense platforms. "I have already deployed our special weapons system. We will target their flagship first, then their support vessels." Several ministers gasped. "You've activated weapons without council approval," one shouted. Dravkar smiled coldly. "By the time this meeting ends, the human threat will be eliminated. Then you can thank me for saving our civilization." The meeting in the lower level was interrupted by blaring alarms. Commander Grant received an urgent message on her communication device. "Your defense platforms have activated targeting systems," she said, her voice suddenly hard. "All pointed at our ships." Admiral Zorthax looked horrified. "That's impossible. The Council didn't authorize." "It's Dravkar," Clid Nera said. "He's making his move." Grant turned to leave, but Martinez blocked her path. "Please, Commander. This isn't the Confederation's decision. If you attack our worlds in retaliation, billions of innocent lives will be lost." "Then stop him," Grant replied. "You have exactly 2 minutes before our ships return fire." As Grant left, Zorthax activated his emergency override codes. "All Confederation vessels, this is Admiral Zorthax. Stand down immediately. Defense platforms are to deactivate on my authority." A voice responded, "Sorry, Admiral. General Dravkar has locked us out of the systems." The first shots fired from Confederation platforms, streaking toward the human fleet. To everyone's surprise, the advanced weapons actually penetrated the shields of several human vessels, causing visible damage. From the communication system came a triumphant message from Dravkar. "See, the myths were wrong. Humans can bleed." What happened next stunned the watching Confederation observers. Instead of unleashing their full power against Confederation worlds, the human ships responded with precise, surgical strikes that targeted only military installations, specifically the platforms firing upon them. Captain Alan Bishop's voice broadcast across all channels. "This is the U.S. Valiant. We are targeting military installations only. Civilian areas will not be harmed. Repeat, civilians are not targets." Even under attack, the human showed restraint that contradicted everything in the ancient warnings. Watching from the capital, Klidnera suddenly realized the truth. Humans weren't quarantined because they were monsters. They were quarantined because they had proven themselves too powerful to control and too principled to conquer. The battle lasted only 23 minutes. By the time it ended, every Confederation weapons platform under General Dravkar's control had been disabled with surgical precision. The human fleet remained in position, damaged but still overwhelmingly powerful. In the council chamber, General Dravkar was placed under arrest, his face twisted with rage as guards led him away. "You fools," he shouted. "This is just the beginning. They'll conquer us all." First Minister Grekva looked exhausted as he addressed the emergency session. The human commander has agreed to a ceasefire. They're requesting that Admiral Zorthax, Science Officer Klibnara, and Liza Martinez come aboard their flagship. "For what purpose?" asked one of the ministers nervously. "They say, to demonstrate their true capabilities." Grekva's voice dropped, not as a threat, but as a gesture of transparency. The human shuttle docked with the massive flagship Guardian. Admiral Zorthax tried to hide his anxiety as he led the small Confederation delegation through the airlock. Despite his years commanding starships, he felt like a child walking into the den of a predator. Fleet Commander Grant greeted them at the entrance. "Welcome aboard the Guardian. I appreciate your willingness to come." "We had little choice," Zorthax replied honestly. Grant's expression softened slightly. "There's always a choice, Admiral. Your General Dravkar chose violence. You chose dialogue." She led them through corridors filled with human crew members going about their duties. Many glanced curiously at the aliens but continued their work with disciplined focus. "Your ship is impressive," Klidnera said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear as she studied the technology around them. They stopped at a large viewport overlooking a massive engineering section. Below, engineers worked on systems that glowed with energy the Confederation scientists had only theorized about. "This is our standard propulsion system," Grant explained, "what you'd call fourth-generation quantum-fold technology. We've been using it for about 70 years. Zorthax couldn't hide his shock. 70 years. Our best scientists believe such technology is centuries away." Grant nodded. "We develop technology quickly. It's both our blessing and our curse." She led them to a control room where a large holographic display showed a map of the galaxy. With a gesture, she zoomed in on a section that appeared empty on Confederation charts. "This is human space," she said. 217 worlds, over 30 billion citizens, hidden behind technology that makes our systems appear uninhabited to your sensors." Klidnera stared in wonder. "But why hide? Why not join the galactic community?" "Ambassador Carter can answer that better than I can," Grant replied, leading them to a conference room where the human ambassador waited. Ambassador Olivia Carter greeted them warmly, as if the recent conflict had never happened. "Thank you for coming. I believe honesty is the only way forward now." Zorthax asked the question that had been bothering him. Why did humans truly remain hidden all these years? Carter's expression became thoughtful. "We knew how we were portrayed in your histories. Rather than force a confrontation that would only confirm your fears, we watched and waited, hoping the Confederation would mature enough to accept difference. But the quarantining," Zorthax began, "was mutual," Carter finished. "Your ancestors tried to isolate us. We accepted the isolation and expanded in other directions, developing our own society away from outside influence." Meanwhile, in a damaged section of the ship, Engineer Paul Hudson worked alongside Confederation repair crews who had come to help fix the space station damaged in the battle. He found himself working with Klibnera, who had volunteered to assist with technical translations. "I never thought I'd be working with a human," she admitted as they reconnected power conduits. "In our stories, you were always so scary," Paul suggested with a smile. "Mythical," she replied, "like talking to a legend." Paul laughed. "We're just people. Different biology, different history, but still just trying to make our way in the universe." He handed her a tool. "Sometimes all it takes is working together on something small to see past the big differences." As they continued their work, throughout the ship similar scenes played out. Humans and Confederation species cautiously beginning to understand each other, one conversation at a time. 6 months after the first appearance of human warships in Confederation space, representatives from both civilizations gathered on the newly built Unity Station. The massive structure floated at the exact midpoint between Confederation and human territories, a symbol of the new relationship forming between the once separated peoples. Admiral Zorthax, now serving as the Confederation's High Ambassador to Earth, adjusted his ceremonial robes as he prepared to address the assembled delegates. Through the viewport, he could see ships from dozens of species, the curved organic designs of the Confederation fleet alongside the sleek, powerful human vessels. "Never thought I'd see the day," said a familiar voice. Ambassador Olivia Carter approached, wearing formal diplomatic attire. "Nor I," admitted Zorthax. "For years I told stories about mythical humans at dinner parties. Now I'm signing peace accords with them." Carter smiled. "Life has a strange way of surprising us." The grand chamber filled with representatives from both civilizations. At the center stood a simple table with a document that would forever change the course of galactic history, the Earth Accords. First Minister Grekva opened the ceremony. "Today, we correct a mistake made by our ancestors 1,000 years ago. Today, we welcome humanity as equals in the greater galactic community." Earth President Samantha Evans spoke next. "For centuries, we chose isolation rather than conflict. We built our civilization away from others, unsure if we would ever be accepted. Today marks the end of that isolation." The signing proceeded with solemn dignity. As the final signatures were recorded, a cheer erupted throughout the station, echoed across communication channels to countless worlds. In the observation deck after the ceremony, Admiral Zorthax found himself surrounded by curious Confederation citizens, eager to hear his thoughts. "We feared monsters from our stories," he told the assembled delegates, "but found instead a mirror reflecting our own fears. Humans aren't the dangerous creatures of our myths. They're simply different, as all species are different from one another." Across the room, Captain John Mercer of the U.S. Defiant discussed defense plans with Confederation military officers. His first officer, Lieutenant Maria Ramirez, displayed holographic projections of the new Joint Defense Initiative. "These early warning systems will protect the outer colonies from any threats beyond known space," she explained. "Human technology combined with Confederation knowledge of local space conditions." The Confederation officers watched with barely concealed awe as the advanced systems were detailed. What had been feared as weapons of war were now being shared as tools of protection. On the Confederation capital, a class of junior science students gathered excitedly in a newly built lecture hall. Their instructor, Science Director Clip Nera, promoted for her role in preventing war, checked the time nervously. "Today we have a special guest," she announced. "The first human professor in Confederation history." Engineer Paul Hudson entered the room, now wearing the uniform of the Joint Scientific Corps. The students whispered among themselves, many seeing the human in person for the first time. Paul smiled at their obvious curiosity. "Let me tell you the true story of Earth," he began, "not the myth you've heard. It begins not with war, but with curiosity. The same curiosity I see in all of you." As he spoke, the students leaned forward, eager to learn about the humans who had transformed from frightening legends to fascinating allies in just 6 months. Outside the classroom window, a human ship and a Confederation vessel performed a joint training exercise, their movements perfectly synchronized. What had begun with warships and ultimatums had evolved into cooperation and mutual respect. In his private quarters that evening, Admiral Zorthax recorded his personal log. Perhaps this is what our ancestors feared most about humans, not their capacity for violence, but their ability to change us simply by existing. The myths warned us to fear them, but failed to mention we might come to admire them as well. He looked out at the stars, where human and Confederation ships now traveled freely between their worlds. "The quarantine is over," he said softly, "and the true story has just begun."